I'm Jessie Robertson from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and this is Alaska Voices, a place for communities to connect through conversation in order to build a better tomorrow for Alaskans and the world.
Originally, I grew up in Gakona, Alaska,
Tyonek,
Egypt,
Idaho,
Rampart,
St. Lawrence Island,
St. Paul.
And I'm here with my student,
my science buddy,
my teacher, my homie.
I'm his daughter.
My name is John Walsh. My age is 69, and my relationship to Larry Hinzman is that I work in one of the research institutes over which he is the vice chancellor.
So my name is Larry Hinzman. I'm 62 years old, and John and I are colleagues. So, John, we've been working together for a long, long time. Can you tell us what first piqued your interest about climate and climate change studies?
Yeah, I actually started working on Arctic sea ice back in the late 1960s with the Navy. There was a lot of work at the time going on in connection with sea ice dynamics, predicting sea ice for the supply of the pipeline and that type of thing, but there was not much interest in how sea ice might fit into the bigger climate picture.
So right now it seems like everybody has an understanding of what climate change is and the climate dynamics. Do you think in the 60s and 70s it was the same? Was popular opinion really interested in it, or was it largely ignorance or lack of attention?
I think it was lack of attention, and probably on both sides of the coin, on the scientific community's side and on the public side. And those two are not independent. When there are very few climate scientists, there's much less outreach. The public hears a lot less about what's going on in climate, just because there are fewer people doing research on the topic, fewer people monitoring climate. On the other hand, the lack of general interest by the public results in a downplay as a priority of climate when it comes to the funding agencies. There's a connection between the two sectors there, and I think back in the 60s and 70s, we were seeing some of what I'd call the downside of the climate interest cycle.
So the interest and the concern about a changing climate has waxed and waned over the last 50 years. So what do you think, what's driving those changes, dynamics from year to year and decade to decade, just of the interest in the general public and the political realm?
I think a large part of what drives the public's interest in climate change is the direct impacts that they experience from extreme events. Things like droughts, floods, hurricanes, those types of things. They catch the public's interest. When it hits your backyard, you notice what's in the system, the physical system. We've had some major freezing rain events in high latitudes just in the last few years. The climate models certainly indicate that rain on top of snow, the freezing rain, will become more common in the future.
The consequences have been dramatic in that our Arctic ecosystems were not evolved to handle rain on snow or midwinter rain events, in that they've been incredibly catastrophic for muskox herds. They've been really bad for caribou. They're very, very hard for our the dominant vegetation types that are up here. It's an unusual meteorologic event that we're going to have to adapt to.
That type of event highlights the challenges we face in relating climate change to impacts. There may be one freezing rain event that has a major impact on an ecosystem over an area of several hundred miles on a side. That type of event may not happen again for 5 or 10 years. And in that period, the awareness of freezing rain may sort of fade from many people's front burner, so to speak. We also need to remember, too, that colder climates are more vulnerable to these events when they happen, because when we get a freezing rain event around here, the ice hangs around for a while. If we get an event in November, there's probably still going to be some of that ice on the trees and on the side of the road in February or March. Whereas down in Chicago, it'll melt off in the next week or so. So the impacts there are much more temporary than what we get around here.
Have there been any surprises with respect to environmental responses or ecological impacts that we didn't anticipate?
I don't think we anticipated the speed of the sea ice loss, how rapidly things would change from, say, the mid-2000s decade to the present. And then that's a period of just 10 or 15 years. And when you lose half of your sea ice volume, in fact, we've lost more than half of the volume in such a short time, that's something that I don't think people really anticipated. And I don't think we anticipated the changes in the Greenland ice sheet. The ice sheet is losing mass at a fairly rapid rate, one that's not negligible when you look at the changes in sea level, global sea level. The rate of warming of the ground in high latitudes is occurring at a faster rate than we might have thought. The conventional wisdom is that the ground temperatures in permafrost areas will warm, but they'll warm slowly. But what we're seeing up on the North Slope is a rapid enough warming that we could actually get thawing of what has been cold permafrost in just 30 or 40 years.
So you've studied climate dynamics all of your professional life. Looking back, has it been a fulfilling career, and would you do it over again if you could?
I'd certainly do it over again. I think you and I both got into the climate research area at the optimum time. It's almost like being a surfer and catching the wave. We got on the wave at the right time, and the real question is how far this wave is going to go. But I wouldn't hesitate to make the same career decision again. I'd be curious about your reaction too. Would you do it again, or would you do it differently?
I would do it again, but as far as, find it fulfilling, I find it frustrating in that this is such an important problem. This is probably one of the biggest problems facing society today, and I'm just a little dismayed that the administration of the United States and part of our population are not more concerned about this. There's a severe threat on the horizon, and we really do need to respond to address it before it overtakes us.
Yeah, and what concerns me is that it's the next generation or two that's really got the higher stake. We're pulling the trigger, so to speak, but they're going to be the ones who are really impacted down the road.
The thing that gives me the most optimism is to see the level of innovation and energy and enthusiasm and capability in the next generation of scientists.
What impresses me about the younger scientists, too, is that they're more inclined to look beyond the ivory tower. They're looking at the big picture of climate and how it relates to society and how they can effectively interact with policymakers, much more so than we did when we started our careers. And that's an encouraging sign for the messages getting through to those who can do something about it in the political arena.
I agree. We did some good work, but there's still a lot of good work that needs to be done.
Right.
Alaska Voices builds bridges by creating a space where community members, friends, policymakers, and scientists can share stories and place-based knowledge. This project was developed in partnership with StoryCorps and was funded by the Alaska Climate Adaptation Science Center. Additional funding was provided by the University of Alaska Fairbanks Chancellor through a generous gift from the Bentley Family Trust to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Alaska Voices would not be possible without the help and efforts of an amazing group of people. Our producer and audio engineer is Kelsey Skonberg of Mossy Stone Media. Our podcast and outreach specialist is Mike DeLue, and our website designer is Carolyn Rosner. If you are interested in more conversations or information, please visit our website at alaskavoices.org.